Fellow humans, I'm Justin Rivas, and this is the Elgato Facecam. This is a premium 1080p, 60 frames per second, uncompressed, low latency webcam targeted at streamers primarily. People who are wanting to stream gaming or I guess other kinds of streams. It's a much, much better quality webcam than your cheap entry-level cameras, but isn't necessarily going to break the bank or look quite as good as a proper mirrorless DSLR camera that's going to cost many times the price. So it fits in kind of this middle spot for those who are not wanting just the cheapest webcam possible. You want something that is a good quality, going to look good, but you maybe don't want to spend $700 to $1,000 to $3,000 on a mirrorless camera like what I'm shooting on right now. And it does do that. Like it delivers on good quality. This is the best quality webcam I personally have ever used. And it also works for things like Zoom and Teams and all those other things, but you're primarily going to want to hook it up to OBS, which it works great with, and get streaming with it. So we will spend most of this review actually looking at the camera. I've got it set up over there, this Elgato Facecam, and we'll walk through the settings and we'll look at how it's doing. And I'm going to help you by giving you the best settings, or at least educating you on the settings and how they work, so that if you've already bought this or you do buy this, you know how to set it up. But first, let's just talk a bit about some of the high-level marketing features that make this a webcam worthy of maybe being 3 or 4 times the price of an entry-level webcam, but still a third or less the price of a full mirrorless camera. So we have a proper Sony Starvis sensor. This is a good quality sensor that they say is optimized for indoor lighting, meaning it should do better in low light situations. No matter what, when you have a small sensor like the ones in your phone or in a webcam like this, it's not going to perform as well as a higher-end mirrorless or DSLR camera that has like a big sensor. But still, it does a very good job. And a lot of that is because it has a great lens in front of it. It is an all-glass, 82mm wide-angle f2.4 lens. That f2.4 is basically for how wide open the aperture is, how much light it lets in. And f2.4 is very good. You're not going to get that in a lot of other webcams. So it helps lots of light come in, helps it look really, really good. This camera outputs uncompressed raw video to your computer. Other webcams are compressing it. You get those like artifacts and the jigglies and it looks a bit weird. This one is just clean, pure 1080p, 60 frames per second. It looks really, really good. And it has an advanced image engine, they're calling it, but processing built inside of it to help it look better. And what I love about this is that the settings get saved directly to the flash memory on the camera. So you don't have to run the software every time to get the settings. You could take it, hook it up to multiple devices, or just more importantly, not have to worry and make sure that, oh, I got to get the software running and I got to reset it every single time you boot up your computer. It's saved in here and it just works. It works on Mac, it works on PC, and again, works with a bunch of other software. Primarily, OBS is what we're focused on. So overall, that's the camera, but let's actually jump into it and check it out, hey? All right, here it is, the Elgato Facecam. And this, I think, would be a common setup for streamers. Again, the camera does not have a built-in microphone, so you can use a microphone. Like this nice little cheap Shure one even is great for like $100 or whatever it is. But notice right away that we've got a lot going on in this picture that the camera is doing a fantastic job of handling. We've got this crazy bright LED light right behind my head. We've got blue lights. We've got dark areas. We've got bright areas. And overall, this looks really, really good. Now, the key with any webcam, it doesn't matter what it is lots and lots of light. Even this one has this great Sony Starvis sensor, but it's a teeny tiny little sensor, and if you don't give it a lot of light, it's going to struggle. Same with like the phone camera you have. In dark, although the new night modes are pretty good, they don't do as well. They need lots of light so that sensor doesn't have to work too hard. If we make that sensor work really hard, which I'll make it do, don't mind the fact that my face is blown out, but you see all the grainy noise, mushy. It's even hard to like read letters here. And that's because it's working hard. So the more light that you can give to your webcam, in my case, I've got 2 LED panels. They're kind of similar to what the Elgato key lights are, but they're not probably as expensive. I don't know, with little diffusers, but I've got lots of light in here, and that's going to be the key to this camera. If you give it lots of light, it is going to look really, really good. Again, this is a webcam, and it's the best looking webcam that I personally have ever seen. It is a fixed focus lens, which means that my face is in focus here, but you can even put stuff right up to the camera and it's in focus, but it's not having to like hunt for focus and shift in and out of focus, and that can be annoying and distracting, but I'm amazed how much they have. I think it's everything from, like, they say like 11 inches or so, which this actually feels more like 5 or 6 inches. Maybe it's not quite, maybe there, but all the way back. I can back up a ways and it just works and looks good. And the lens on here is just, you've got a real glass f2.4 lens. We're at 83 degrees, which is a 24 millimeter equivalent if you had a full frame camera, but that's kind of, it's fairly wide. How far away am I? I'm about an arm's length. I'm about 3 feet away right now. You can zoom in, but it's not actually zooming. It's just kind of digitally cropping. So you'll see you kind of lose resolution here as you get in tight because it's, anyway, keep it backed out if you can. Just move the camera closer, which it's got the threads on it, so you're able to like mount it as close. Potentially, I don't know, you'd want it like down here in front of your monitor. Works good up here, but you can move it around, put it on a little Gorilla Pod, put it on a stand. But let's go through the settings here, see what we're able to adjust. So contrast is your light and dark areas. So low contrast means it kind of flattens it out, and the shadows it brings up, and the highlights, the brighter parts, it brings down. And here, like low contrast, it looks good, and you can kind of do a high contrast where, again, the shadows get crunched and my face still stays in focus. But I don't know, this is good. We got saturation, which is how much color we're going to get, so we could take that out. We got black and white, we can go crazy, and we've got orange and blue, but just kind of, I don't know, somewhere in the middle, like pleasant, very pleasant picture. Sharpness, the funny thing is +2 is basically none. Like it should be labeled 0, I think, because if you go down to 0, you can see how blurry and fuzzy the image gets. 1, it gets a little bit sharper. 2, sharper. I don't know. 3, this is like looking a little digitally over sharpened, and 4, like really crazy sharpened. But if you're in a situation where your lighting isn't good and this ISO has to get cranked up like a good chunk, sometimes adding a little bit of sharpness, we'll see like the definition of things comes back and makes it a little easier to read, like this Facecam letter back here. Add the sharpness, you can kind of read it. You can play with that a little bit, but again, add light and it's going to look beautiful. So that's big, that's sharpness. Exposure, you can set this to automatic, and I've found the camera, it depends how your lighting is set up. Like in my case, I've got a pretty dynamic scene, meaning I've got lots of dark areas around, and it's going to struggle to figure out exactly how it is. You can do center weighted. An average is just, center weighted means it's trying to read the more middle part of the picture, not so much the edges, but you can see in my case here still, it doesn't really figure it out. You can compensate by telling it like, hey, that's too much or that's too little. And so we can kind of dial it in here. Depending on your room and your lighting, it may just be perfect. It might just work automatically, but in my case, I've just got it set well. Shutter speed, this is a way you can kind of cheat and get more light or less light. Like you can turn down your shutter speed, which is how fast the camera's opening and closing. But if you're trying to run 60 frames per second, which this can do 1080p at 60 frames per second, you have to be at least 1/64th. If you go under and you go 132, it's going to start to blur and get just a little bit, your motion isn't going to be as smooth. This is fine if you're running at 30 frames per second, but if you're at 60 frames per second, you want to be at least 1/64th. The real rule for camera people is you want to be double, which is 1/125th. Don't worry about that here. 1/64th looks good. And ISO is just how much it's telling that sensor to brighten itself up. It's kind of like, I don't know, like a gain or the amount of power that the sensor is applying to brighten the image. But the more power you apply, the grainier it gets. So your goal is to actually try and keep this at 100. That would be the goal. And I could actually turn up my lights a little to get straight to 100, but going from like 100 to 120 is fine. I found this camera like under 400, it does okay. But as you kind of start to get up above that, like 500, 600, that's where you're seeing all this grain and all this noise come into the background. And it does have a noise reduction setting, which is if I turn it on, you're going to see a chunk of that grain kind of goes away, but you're going to lose sharpness at the sake of that, and it makes it harder to read things, but it does take care of the grain. So if you have to turn the ISO up, but do everything you can, just add light. Add light, and this will be good. Yeah, it could probably be maybe a little bit brighter. But let's go 150. Image still looks quite good. And again, I don't know how often you're going to be talking and have like a complete full screen image like this, but it still looks pretty good. Is it as good as something like the camera I normally record on? No, but that has a much bigger sensor. On this camera, you're not going to get that blurry background. You're going to need to get a little mirrorless or digital SLR if you want to have your face be in focus and the background be all blurry and have it be able to track focus well. But we're talking about something that's like a third the price of that. So it doesn't quite get there, but still looks pretty dang good. And white balance, again, you can set it to automatic. What this is doing is trying to decide how blue or how orange to make your face, as well as green and pink. And those are kind of the main colors it's cycling between. So if you don't do automatic, you can make your face look more blue, or you can make it look more orange between that. Unfortunately, they don't let you adjust pink and green, which you can see here when I turn this on automatically, my face gets a little more yellow. That's because it's adding green into the image. They don't let you set that here, but we can still get to something that looks pretty good. I just probably would take the pink down a little bit, but it's having a little bit of trouble reading because I have all of this blue in the background and some pink up there and a few other things, but you can set that or you can leave that automatic. The big reason why I would not recommend setting your exposure to automatic is if you get talking and doing things and showing stuff to the camera, you're going to see that it's always changing the lighting and it's getting brighter, darker, things in the background. And I don't know, I just find that a little bit distracting versus if you've got it solid, it's not changing. And provided your lighting is good, that won't really matter. But even as you move around and if your clothes change colors and different things, it may read a little bit more black here and then try and brighten it up or do this or that. If you can, get your exposure off of there. But those are the settings, and I think I mentioned noise reduction. If you have some flickering lights in the background from cheap LEDs or different things, you can try and turn on some anti-flicker, but in our case, we don't need it. I'm not actually sure why those didn't. Oh, I think, is it? Oh, yeah. Yeah, if your exposure's off automatic, you can't do that, but anyway, that's fine. But overall, it looks great, and at the end of the day, you can click save, and it's saved in the camera, and now those settings are locked in there. But overall, it's a great, great looking camera. It's not incredibly sharp. It doesn't have that shallow depth of field. But for the price, I don't think anyone's going to see this and go, "Whoa, you're playing on a cheap webcam." Like, it looks good, and your ability to dial in the settings is great. Just keep the light up. Okay, so there you have it. Again, it looks really, really good. Does it look as good as my mirrorless camera would hooked up to here? No, not quite. But I mean, this combo's a couple $1,000s. If you were just getting into it and you're using a PC, I would say you could get a Canon M50 for around $600 or $700 US. But a lot of the time you spend anyway it's not like full screen video. And that one you saw, like you saw in the video, it looks good full screen. It's maybe not quite as good, but most of the time it's going to be a smaller size. And overall, I think it looks fantastic. I love how easy it is to use. And overall, it's going to take you up a good notch from an entry-level webcam, which I think is the goal. So Elgato, you've done a great job. If you guys have any questions, just don't ask me the question, well, should I get this one or another one that's similarly priced? At this price point, this performs really well. And I know there's other good ones from Razer or Logitech or different ones. I would say rather than worrying about the minute differences in quality between something like this and one of its competitors, spend your time and energy on your lighting. Get your lighting good. The better your lighting is, and the more creative you make your set by adding a little bit of color or, again, lighting your face up well, that is going to make way more of a difference than the minor differences between webcams at similar price points. They're all going to do a great job. This one especially, I think, does a fantastic job at this price point, especially when you get your set looking well and have it set up good. So I'm Dustin Rivas. Any comments, questions, drop them in the comments below, but thank you for watching.